Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Adrienne Klein. I am the Programs and Operations Specialist here at the Oregon Bioscience Incubator. Welcome to this Lunch and Learn. Patents are easy, selling is hard. While we get settled, we have some housekeeping items. Please stay muted. Introduce yourself in the chat. We will be covering questions throughout, so use the raise your hand emoji and we will get your questions answered. I'm going to put my LinkedIn in the chat so you can feel free to connect with me. Also with us today is Renee Miller, the Associate Director of OBI, and her LinkedIn will be in the chat as well. Please take a moment to read our land acknowledgement slide, and we'll also be putting a link in the chat so you can learn more about it. A big thank you to Cambria Health Solutions. They are sponsoring this event today. It's very important that we have sponsors that believe in our cause, like Cambria, and make programs like this happen. In this Lunch and Learn, Dan Kimball joins OBI to discover how to align your patents and intellectual property with market needs for better success. Dan Kimball is an accomplished patent attorney with extensive experience in prosecuting over 1,000 patent applications and trademarks domestically and internationally across various industries. He excels in managing large intellectual property portfolios to maximize their value and has a proven track record in negotiating licensing deals by thoroughly understanding market needs. And we will also be putting Dan's LinkedIn in the chat, so feel free to connect with him. Dan, take it away.
Some of the cons to patents are they can be very expensive. Another thing is secrecy. So if you, let me go back. If you make a patent, you kind of have to disclose the invention. You have to disclose the invention. So if it's something where you think you may not be able to get a strong patent, maybe you should not file a patent. You should just go with trade secrecy. Next issue is the enforcement. It's very expensive to enforce patents. If you're either on the enforcing end or the receiving end of a patent lawsuit, it can cost hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars depending on the patent, and so it's expensive. And lastly, flexibility and speed. Some things are moving so fast that by the time you get your patent, the market's already moved on. So maybe you just say, I'll just move fast and not worry about patents. But it all depends. But again, in the biomedical field, usually patents are worth getting, but it is on a case-by-case basis. Next slide, please. So the next question you have to ask yourself is, can you even get a patent? So some things are not patentable subject matter. So you have to really determine if it's patentable or not. As Edward Deming said, he was the father of quality control. You don't know what you don't know. So that means, you may think you know the field, but you really have to do patent searching, because unless you search it, you don't know what's out there. Next question is, can you get a patent that's consequential and impactful? Now, sometimes you can get a patent, but maybe it's too narrow. So if it's too narrow, it won't serve your purpose. That is to keep others from competing with you. So you got to look at that as well. One thing you need to do really is you should work with patent counsel early on, very early on in the process, to see, what kind of patents you can get, help with the patent searching. I'm a big advocate of doing a little searching, at least some searching on your own. There's a lot of resources. You can use the Patent Office website, Google Patents. There's other proprietary websites and resources to do patent searches. So you should do that. You should do literature searches. It's very important. If you spend a lot of money and time and then find out your invention is not patentable, that's pretty disappointing. So you try to avoid that disappointment. Also, you need to understand the competition. Most things that are worthwhile, there's already people trying to do it. Either they're doing it or they're trying to do it. And if you find out that no one's doing it what you're trying to do, you got to ask yourself an important question is like, am I ahead of my time, or am I just completely off in left field and maybe there's no market for what I'm doing? So those are some important questions you got to ask. Let's go to the next slide. And this next slide is, should I get a patent? So this question is really I think the most critical question there is. It's a business-centric question. And it's really centers around, is there a market for what you're doing? If there's no market for what you're doing, then again, why are you filing for a patent? You can do stuff. If you're an investigator, go ahead, do your research. But if there's not a market for what you're doing, you probably should go back to the drawing board. There's a few ways you can find out if there's a market. You can do market research to identify current market needs. And there's a lot of people who are expert in that, and you can do a lot on your own, of course. There's a few things you can do, get customer feedback. If there's a field you're familiar with, you can interview people, you can conduct surveys, you can monitor social media to see, who's talking about something, who has a need. You can do a competitive analysis and industry analysis. So that's very important. And for identifying future market needs, it's kind of similar. You can do trend analysis. You can do technology assessments, follow tech blogs, do news site reviews, and of course, do patent searching to see who's doing what. If no one's filing patents on something, again, it may be, why is that true? If you think there's a market need and no one else has identified it, maybe you're too far ahead. Maybe not, but maybe so. You have to ask yourself that question, though. Anyways, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I think you've all heard about the minimum viable product. So in case you haven't heard of what that is, it's basically if you have a new product, and when I say product, I'm talking about an actual physical product or a service, but I'll just say product for ease of conversation. So it basically is a product that has enough features to attract early adopters. And the goal of getting this MVP, most valuable player, or minimal viable product, is you want to get customer feedback on, to see if there's a future for your product. Now, again, before you file a patent application, you have to be very careful not to talk to people because you let the cat out of the bag, which you don't want to do. But you want to get some feedback on, is there a market for what you're doing, and what the bells and whistles are, and again, what the most basic thing you have that can be patented. And this, usually the MVPs are developed iteratively. So you have one version, and then you may talk to people and you say, well, people really don't need that, but they're really more interested in something. And you always have to take yourself out of your own mind. We all, I think, have this mindset that I know what I know what people want, but you don't really know what people want. I think I'm the worst person. Would never ask me what I think is going to be popular, because I'm probably completely off. So you really have to think outside of the box and talk to people to find out what is really wanted out there, and it may surprise you. And then based on that, you can kind of design in, what kind of product you should be developing for whatever market you're trying to do. And another point is mind the gap to make sure your patent covers key aspects. I see this all the time, that people, they invent something, and there's a lot of researchers, they'll invent something and they're just so focused on this cool technology, but then they forget, well, where's the market? Where's the market aspects? So you need to really always think about what's the future market, what's the current and future market, and make sure your patent, if possible, covers that. Now, it's not always possible, but you should always keep that in mind, because that's what you're trying to do, patenting something to help you with your marketing. Let's go to the next slide. So after you make a determination, like what's the MVP, you got to ask yourself, can I get to market? Now, a lot of novices ask me, well, I'm going to patent this, and then I'm going to license it. And I always ask them, well, why do you think you're going to license it? Why is somebody going to pay you good money to license your technology? Are you an expert in the field? Do you have a huge patent portfolio? Have your patents been litigated? And they usually say no, no, no. So it's probably unlikely that you're going to be able to license your product, because people don't have vision. you have to build a lot before people start seeing what you see. So as an entrepreneur, you need to create the excitement and the vision and push it a long ways before you have any prospect of licensing it. So the question here is, can you build a successful team to implement all the steps that are needed? So that's very important. It's unlikely that you're going to do it all by yourself. I mean, maybe if you're like a Renaissance person, you might be able to do it, but nobody has enough time and energy to do everything. So you need a team. Next important factor is money. If you don't have enough money and you run out of money, a yard away from, the 10-yard line, you're a luck. So you have to have a financial plan and make sure you can get there. It may take a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, but you got to have a plan, and you're going to be spending a lot of time raising money, probably. Next question, is there enough runway to get to a launch? Just like a big, heavy plane, versus a little Cessna, you have to think a lot about how the team is going to launch this and how much money and time it's going to all take. So that's going to be in your planning, and that can be in your IP too. So IP can attract investors. So if you can get some IP, maybe you can get some money early on to help you get down the runway and actually become airborne. And also, you got to ask yourself, lastly, can you actually make it, or can somebody make it? So I see this all the time where people do these patents on interesting bench type lab tests, where it's like, oh, that's cool, but you can never make it. It's too expensive. It takes too long. So, there's most of the patents, I guess, fall in that category, and they're hoping that somebody will figure out how to commercialize it and ramp it up. So if you can, try to think about that early on, because there's so many patents that are just they're really cool science experiments, but they don't get developed, or by the time they get developed, the patents are expired, or they don't have much life on them. So try to keep that in mind if you can. And if you can't see how it can be made, you should maybe go back to the drawing board and see if you could simplify it. So simplify to the point where you can't make it more simple. And that would be my advice for, can you get to the market? Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, the next thing is, can you build a company that has a long-term advantage? So does your patent build business advantage? Well, if you have a good patent that really covers the invention, covers the MVP, then you have a chance of having a patent that builds your advantage. Are there other advantages you can build? Well, trade secrets are good. A lot of times patents are coupled with trade secrets. You file a patent that discloses the invention, but behind that, there's probably, bookshelves of all the know-how that you don't have to necessarily patent, but that really tells you how to make it, how to ramp it up, how you're going to launch it. Those things are big advantages. Next question is, should this product be built? That goes, is there the market? Is there a big enough market? If the market is for, 100 people, you might say, well, 100 people would love this, and then after that, it's a hard sell. So maybe it's not worth it. I mean, certainly like medical technology or let's say devices for producers or something, you might only sell a very small number. It might be worth it, it may not, but you got to look at it. And then lastly, don't build Maginot Lines. You probably remember from high school history, the French built this long line of defenses against the Germans. And what did the Germans do? They blitzkrieg. They just went around the Maginot Lines. So it was like a lot of patents are like that. They're there, but they can easily be avoided by just designing around. So when you're doing your patents, when you're designing your patents, you always have to think, how is somebody going to try to avoid the patent, avoid infringement, design around? So you've got to put a lot of effort into that. I remember early on that people would meet with me and they would disclose what they thought was the best embodiments, and then they wouldn't bother disclosing some other embodiments because they thought, oh, this guy's just going to charge me more for a bigger, more expensive patent application. And I'm just going to avoid that by just only telling the patent attorney like just this one version. But the problem with that is, again, you could miss some, other important embodiments that somebody may say, well, I'll just do this way. So you really need to think about, not only the one you're going to build, but the ones that somebody else may want to build, and you want to put that in your patent application. So that'll give you a lot of power. Okay. Any questions so far? Everyone's been quiet. Let me see if I can check the chats. Okay, there's actually chats. Okay. I don't see any questions, but if you want to ask questions at this point, please feel free. No?
I have a question.
Okay.
Are patents the only way to protect your property?
They're the only way to protect inventions. You can protect, goodwill with trademarks, like source identifiers. You can protect, artistic works with copyrights. You can protect patents also with trade secrets. I mentioned that. The only way to do that is if you keep it secret and no one else discovers it legitimately. If somebody steals it, they're violating your trade secrets. But if somebody can independently, reverse engineer it, then they wouldn't violate a trade secret. But sometimes trade secrets are very good. A lot of technology is actually protected with trade secrets because, like, the little particular details are so hard to figure out that a lot of companies just say we have tons of trade secrets, and we keep them that way because, unlike patents, they can last forever. So yeah, trade secrets are great. And not everything is protectable with IP. In the area of fashion, dress designs are not protectable. Patterns of fabric are protectable. But if you are a dress designer or a shoe designer, unfortunately, people could knock off your designs and offer them, 2 weeks later. So yeah, not everything's protectable.
Dan, I have a question about the trade
Sure.
secrets. Are they filed somewhere? How much effort is it to create trade secrets and have them secret? I mean, can you explain the process real quick?
Yeah, trade secrets are basically there's nothing you file. It's basically you internally need to go through a process to basically tell everyone you regard X as your trade secret. You need to take steps to maintain the secrecy. So let's say you have a manufacturing process, and you really maybe need to put a little security in that area. Like if you don't want somebody to see how you're, like, a way you're stamping stainless steel that can create, let's say you can create smooth curves as opposed to a straight line curve. We know the Cybertruck has all the straight lines. It's very angular because it's hard to stamp stainless steel other than in straight lines. And let's say you figure out a way to make normal looking body panels with stainless steel, with thick, large panels. That would be something really cool. Maybe that would be something you could keep a trade secret. So let's say you invented something like that. You would probably have to have secrecy around the process. Maybe only people who needed to have access could have access, and you'd monitor it. They'd have to sign like NDAs, and you couldn't publish it. So things you would have to do. But and then enforcement wise, if there's a trade secret violation, you can enforce those under state law. Most states have trade secret laws, and they pretty much follow the Uniform Trade Secret Act. So they're all pretty much the same, but they all require that you take action to protect the state trade secret. Has to be actually secret. So if everybody knows like how to stamp stainless steel to make, curves, then, and you're doing nothing new, then that's not really a trade secret. Or if somebody independently discovers it without stealing from you, they can do it. So yeah, there's no trade secret registration though. You got to just keep it secret. Okay, let's see. Let's continue. Okay, Let's talk about provisional patent applications. Provisional patent applications are great. They're just a great placeholder. What you do is you basically file an application with the USPTO that hopefully discloses the invention fully and completely. Whenever I recommend clients to file provisional applications, I always tell them, please make them as good as possible. Make them as good as a regular utility if possible. So have everything in there. If you don't put it in a provisional later on, and if you need it, you may have to say that's new material that doesn't get the priority filing date of the provisional. So provisionals will establish a 1-year priority period during which you can disclose the invention without losing patent rights. If you don't file a follow-up and you start selling, let's say you file a provisional today, and tomorrow you start selling a product, and a year and 1 day goes by, and you haven't converted the provisional, you lost your rights. So you need to file a regular utility within 1 year of the provisional. Otherwise, you lose all your rights. The US gives you a little flexibility in terms of like having a pre-patent file disclosure of the invention, but every other country says if you don't have an application filed before you disclose the invention, you lose your rights to file a patent application. So basically, file a provisional application if you ever want to get a patent in the US, or especially abroad. Poorly drafted provisionals can give you a false sense of security. So people sometimes say, oh, I'm okay, I'm protected. I filed a provisional application. Well, if that provisional application is lacking, then you may not be fully protected. And you should probably get a patent attorney to help you. You may not have the budget to have them do everything, but if you write a great white paper and think about it, put everything in there, their job's much easier, and you can give them a budget and say, we need to do it within this, let's say, $1,000 or $2,000 budget. They can usually help you. And it may not be perfect, but it'll be as perfect as you can get for the budget. So let's go to the next slide.
Dan, there's a
Yes.
question in
Sure.
the chat. Claude asks, is a patent desirable or necessary when the invention is going to be manufactured by another company?
Oh,
For example, a biomedical electronic inventions PC boards being manufactured by a Chinese company.
yeah, that's a great question. It's very necessary. If you don't have a patent, then there's nothing to stop that company from basically taking your invention and making it and selling it anywhere they want. So the only thing you have is basically the patent. You can have contractual rights. So let's say you have a manufacturer and you make a contract with them. You're going to make it for me, and you can only make it for me and not for any third parties, and you can't sell it on the side. And if they violate that agreement, you may have a contract claim, but you don't have a patent case. You have a contract claim, and that's a whole different thing than a patent claim. So your rights are very different in a contract claim than a patent claim. Like, for example, contracts usually in like California, you can enforce it only within 4 years of the breach of the contract. Patents can be sued on for up to 7 years after an infringement occurs. So very different, bundle of rights. Yeah, so you should have some at least provisional. Otherwise, you just have a weak contract claim, especially if somebody's abroad. Try suing somebody in China. China doesn't have discovery to find out infringement. The damages are very low compared to the US. So even if somebody infringes in China, even if you can prove they did it and a jury will find in your favor, you're probably not going to collect anything. So it's very difficult. I see another question. They can file a patent ahead of you. Yeah, of course. I mean, they can do that. So I've seen that happen with big American companies. They can be pretty unethical. So yeah, you have to, if you're working with somebody, you probably should file provisional applications even before you talk to people. But one thing we didn't talk about was NDAs. A lot of companies don't really want to sign NDAs. They have a not invented here mindset. And you may disclose to them and they may come up back and say, oh, we invented that a long time ago. And you don't know if that's true or not. So you should just file that way. You have something in your pocket. Yeah. So requirements for a marketable invention. A good invention should solve and provide valuable benefits. So if it's not really a big improvement, it's kind of like people have big inertia problems. They're not going to switch over unless it's a lot better. Should have a great design. Like I think nowadays everything is pretty functional. So if you have a really great, attractive design, I think that attracts a lot of people. They get in more of an emotional attachment to things. This is probably more true for consumer products than for commercial products. But great design always helps. Has to be affordable. If you've got a great invention that's like super expensive, then the business community is not into buying overpriced stuff unless it offers a lot of advantages. Next is manufacturable. You should always think in terms of manufacturability. If something's too expensive to manufacture and your cost of goods is 50%, good luck trying to make a business out of it. On the other hand, if your cost of goods are low, then you have a better chance. And that is in the design. Manufacturability is in the design. So and that could be in the patent. So you need to really think about something that will be manufactured. And let's go back a little bit. It looks like we got advanced. Let's go back to the requirement for marketability slide, please. Excuse me. Yeah, so that's that. And then let's go to the next slide, avoiding rookie mistakes. So these are things
Dan?
like, yes.
I'm sorry to butt in again. There's another question in the chat about how much it costs to file a provisional or utility patent application, approximately.
The two most dangerous words, it depends, right? So if you do a lot of the work yourself, like a good white paper, that reduces the cost. A lot of people will say, I have a budget, I only want to spend X dollars, and you can get it done for whatever budget you put. But if there's more of a budget, you get more time for somebody to review it to make sure it's better. But the more work you do, the lower your cost will be. Provisionals, if somebody just says, here's my invention, I don't want to spend the time, I'm busy, it can cost anywhere from a few $1,000s to $20,000, and same with regular utilities. It really depends on how much writing and research has to be done at an attorney's billing rate. So yeah, it's all over the map. Some things are really simple and other things are really complicated. So it all depends. So anywhere between a few thousand to tens of thousands. Yeah, I've done patent applications that were like $50,000, seriously, and it was just like massive. Took like months, and but not too often. It's usually $5,000 to $15,000 is more typical. Yeah. So rookie mistakes. To avoid making pre-filing public disclosures of the inventions. We already talked about that. Conducting tests or sales. You got to be really careful if you say, I'm just going to do a test sale before you have an application on file. That can actually ruin your rights to get a US and definitely foreign patent applications on file. Not getting NDAs. It's really important to get them. And this happens sometimes where people, they have their NDA, their standard NDA, and they want to approach somebody, and the other party says, we don't sign NDAs. So at that point, you need to decide, is it worth talking to them anyways and taking risk? Well, if you have an application on file, it's less risky. If you don't have an application on file, then you're taking a big risk. So you may not want to do that. And then lastly, not carrying out patent searches. I almost don't want to represent clients anymore who don't do patent searches. If they're not willing to spend the money and invest their resources to a patent attorney, I probably don't want to work with them because they're just being unrealistic and silly. So it's like, no, I don't need to do that. I have better things to do. So, okay, let's go to the next slide. Investors. Investors, you may need investors. Some people try to do everything on their own, which is great, but investors sometimes are necessary. You need to understand that your startup probably doesn't have a lot of inherent value, unless you have got cash on hands or some really cool patents that people see as being great, or unless you have a team that's been proven, like you've done 10 startups and they've all become unicorns, that startup would have value. But if it's not that case, there's probably little value. So just keep that in mind. Investors like to see caution. Like if you're just a cowboy, they don't like that. If you're like acting cautiously, like by doing searches, getting NDAs, doing a lot of research, financial planning, business planning, that makes you look better. Thoroughly understanding the market and the patent landscape is super important. Worst thing in the world is going to an investor meeting, and then acting like you have a wide open field, and then somebody says, "What about this? What about this patent or this company?" And you don't know about them. That's really embarrassing. And I've been there, and it's not a good place to be. So yeah, you got to do your research. That means patent searching. And then, of course, check off all the boxes. The investors, you got to just check off the boxes. When people do due diligence, they basically have checklists. That's how they don't miss things. So you need to have your own checklist to make sure you're not missing things. So make it easy for investors to give you money, and you may succeed. Before we go on, we're going to do a little patent exercise. And is there any other questions? I don't see any new questions. So what I'm going to do is there's a little scenario that I'm going to read, and I'd like people to kind of pose a few ideas they have. We're going to give it a few minutes to talk about, like, what should this person do? So this is an imaginary person. Let's go to the next slide, patent exercise. Okay, so this is an imaginary person. She is Lucy, and she's got a couple young kids, and they never brush their teeth, and she fights with them to brush their teeth. So she's fighting with that, and the dentist says, "You need to brush your teeth better." It's not doing well. But she's a trained chemist, so she says she's aware of there are certain chemicals that help with plaque buildup. It can help stop the bacteria that lead to teeth decay. So she thinks there could be a market. She's talked to her friends, and they think, "Oh, that's a great idea. My kids don't brush their teeth either." So she's got some ideas. What should she do? What should she do if she wants to build a business? So let's take a few minutes, and if you want, you can send me some ideas, and if not, we'll just chat through it. So let's just take a few minutes. Do we have background music? No, I guess.
Dan, would you like people to just unmute themselves or raise their hands, or how?
Sure. Please feel free to just unmute yourself and ask any questions.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, please don't be shy. Shyness does not serve you well as an entrepreneur. I see Claude had another question. If an invention includes a novel and elegant embodiment, please discuss pros and cons of utility versus design. So utility is actually just, like function stuff. Design is only ornamentation. So they're very different. I have a lot of clients who do design patents, and they're very important for them, like things that are ornamental. So they serve different purposes, but they can also exclude competition. I have one client who always files design patents on his hardware designs because he makes them for other people and other companies. And by getting design patents on them, he prevents them from circumventing buying from his company. So, once the product's been out there, it looks cool. This company cannot just buy them, sort them from somebody else and save a few bucks. They have to buy them from him because he's got design patents. He also has utility patents. on the functional aspects, but that's not what people see. A lot of people just look at the look. They like the way it looks. They don't know how it works. They don't care. They just care about how it looks. So design patents serve that ornamentation purpose. Okay. Well, let's just go ahead and talk. I didn't see any comments, but let's just talk about what she should do. So first thing she should probably do is conduct at least a preliminary patent search. She can do it on her own. She's a chemist. She can use some of the resources we talked about, and then make a determination. Is like, are there other patents out there that have like mouthwashes that work really well for replacement for teeth brushing? And if there are, she has to say, well, okay, now what's the market? Like, now do a little market research to see if is there much of a market for this. And there's the different tools to do that. I won't go into that again, but do market research. And then who's going to build this company? She's really busy. She's got 2 young kids. Does she have time and energy to do it on her own? Does she have other people she can work with to build her team? Is she have money to put into this, or could she raise money from her friends, families, and fools network to build this company? So that's a question, make money. Does she have the ability to write a business and financial plan? And let's see what else. Yeah, so patent searching, market searching, business and financial planning, team building. Those are the things she needs to do even before filing a patent application. Then she scheduled a meeting with a patent attorney. A lot of patent attorneys will give a free consultation or low-cost consultation. So she should talk with a patent attorney, explain what she wants to do, talk about best practices, what would be the best way to approach this problem. And let's say she discovers that, like, yeah, actually, I'm a pretty energetic person. I can spend some time. My kids are in daycare, so I can spend some time working on this. I have some money I'm willing to set aside and put into this. I've got a group of friends. We all want to start a company. And we've done our market research, and we think there's a huge market for this because everybody has this problem, and we can get a great trademark, and we're really good at social media, so we can promote it by social media. And the patent attorney says, like, hey, nobody has really done this. You can use these chemicals I've identified, and it looks like you can get a patent on that. So if all those things come together, she could probably file a patent application and go off to the races. And that's just the beginning, of course.
So it looks like Doug has something to say. Doug, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things, like she should actually see if any of these existing compounds have patents that ever claimed potential use as a mouthwash, because then they would be no longer patentable for that particular use.
Yes, of course.
And, I'm sure the patent attorneys will consider obviousness or not with that, because if it would be considered pretty obvious if you're going to put a bunch of stuff with antibacterial compositions together into a mouthwash, unless you can come up with something novel about that particular mixture.
Yeah. And I see another point, Barbara. Should she investigate whether it has to be regulated by FDA? Absolutely. An FDA, depending on what it is, I don't know the actually regulations on mouthwashes. With FDA, it's a consumer product. There's probably some regulation since it affects the mucosal membrane. So she has to look at that. And maybe she needs to consult with an FDA person to see how much, regulation it would be and how difficult it would be. Could she do a 510K if that's required, or that's actually a medical device, but maybe there's a process she can piggyback and not have to do as much work. But yeah, she should talk to an FDA consultant as well to see what would she need to do to overcome any kind of FDA hurdles or consumer hurdles. So any other questions? Okay. Ryan, file provisional to the formulation and license to a big mouthwash manufacturer. Let them do the marketing, sales, reap rewards of royalty. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Again, my experience has been most companies don't want to pay patent royalties. They'd rather just infringe or avoid it or be inspired and come up with their own thing. Most patent licenses are the licensor or licensees always try to not pay or find out all the exemptions and credits, but it's possible. And again, the closer you are, the more work you've done, the more likely you are to be able to license something. But, you know, I would not necessarily go into the game thinking you're going to just license it, because it's just not typical. Licensing is it's really hard. But if sometimes it can be, but the more work you do, the more likely you are to be a license. Anyways, more questions, comments? We're at about coming on 12:50. So Renee and Adrian, what's the process?
The process is, as long as we don't have any other questions then or discussion, then we can give people some of their time back. Just
Okay, Renee Miller. Okay, go ahead, Renee.
Hi, Mike in the chat asked who will or can make the product and in what country are they relative to the local regulations such as environmental and
I don't know. I have no idea. That was something to explore. Like parallel import matters. I don't know about that. And environmental stuff, that's just its own. I mean, there's just so many things once you go down the rabbit hole of making something with chemicals. It's like every country has their own regulations on different chemicals, and it's complicated. Any little project is so complicated. So yeah, I don't know, but that would something to look into. Thank you. So yeah, you can reach me here. If you have any questions, I'm happy to chat with you and give you some ideas. And thank you for your attention, and hope you have a great rest of the week.
okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone. I hope that you got some nuggets of information from this. Special thanks to Dan for sharing his valuable insights and experiences. I want to let you know that when you pop out of here, then there will be a survey that pops up on your screen. I would love it if you took the time to fill out the survey. It helps us really tailor the kind of programs that you do want us to bring to you. This program has been recorded, and I will get the recording out to you along with the slide deck, hopefully by the end of this week. And we have more events coming up, including trivia next Tuesday, right here at the OBI. We would love to see you. Visit our website and you can look at our upcoming events. And we will see you again very soon at the next one. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.